The moment I knew something was off wasn't a scream in the night or lipstick on a collar. It was the GoPro on my bookshelf facing the wrong direction. It used to point toward the glass doors overlooking the deck, mostly so I could catch the raccoon stealing from the bird feeder. But that afternoon, it had been turned ever so slightly to the left, just enough to miss the couch entirely. And like a good little war dog trained to notice the subtle difference between a staged village and a real ambush, I knew someone had been trying to avoid being seen. Not hide, avoid. It was a delicate distinction, the kind that makes you smile in that way that doesn't touch your eyes. My name is Leon, and I've been trained to kill people in 9 countries, but apparently, I still hadn't learned how to spot a liar in yoga pants. Sandra was out filming content, which was code for wandering around Croatia with a Canon and a smile that didn't belong to me anymore. I didn't say anything. Not then. I simply made myself a cup of decaf, because nothing pairs better with betrayal than low blood pressure, and sat down in front of my old home server to pull the backup surveillance footage. See, I used to test systems for government contracts, timing, battery life, failure thresholds, and sometimes I forgot to uninstall things. And sometimes she forgot they were still there. That GoPro was one of 4 devices in that room. 3 of them she knew about. The 4th one, embedded behind a hollowed-out HVAC panel, still ran on a motion sensor and dumped to a redundant cloud folder she didn't have access to. I clicked into the folder, expecting nothing. What I got was something. Then something else. And then a slow, methodical catalog of deeply intimate somethings between my partner and a man who moved around my house like he'd built it. There was no panic in me. No rage. Just the mild, amused detachment of someone watching a dog eat from a plate they've already decided to throw out. I zoomed in on his face. Tall. Late 40s. Military haircut, but out of regulation. His posture was familiar in that wrong way, relaxed where it should have been rigid, comfortable where it should have been cautious. She kissed him by the bookshelf, right in front of my defense contractor award, as if irony had paid admission. I stared at the freeze frame, her hand curled around the back of his neck, and all I could think about was how she had once told me life should be spontaneous. Funny, spontaneity didn't seem to apply to how quickly she removed her ring whenever he walked in. I paused the footage, stood up, and walked to the kitchen. Her favorite wine glass was sitting in the sink, half-rinsed, like it had been hidden quickly but not thoroughly. She was supposed to be in Montenegro. That glass hadn't been used in over a year until now. I checked the trash. Nothing. I checked the dishwasher. Still full. My house hadn't just been used, it had been occupied. And the details weren't accidental. The man, whoever he was, had been coached. Don't use the front door. Don't leave anything in the sink. Keep the cameras in mind. That told me 2 things. This wasn't new, and this wasn't casual. I sat down at my desk and typed in a name I hadn't used in over a decade. I pulled up my old incident reports. There he was, Staff Sergeant Nathan "Nate" Caro, discharged dishonorably for falsifying mission data. I'd reported him myself after he nearly got our unit ambushed in Helmand. So he was alive. And apparently, he was also screwing my girlfriend on my couch in my house while she filmed travel content in the spaces I designed for her. I didn't flinch. I didn't yell. I just sat there, watching 2 traitors laugh on my camera feed like they were stealing candy from a vending machine instead of detonating the last shred of respect I had for either of them. And the wildest part? I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because they had no idea who they were playing with. Nate forgot who filed that report. Sandra had never asked what I did before I started selling tactical gear on YouTube. And neither of them realized that silence isn't forgiveness. It's the sound of the safety being taken off. There was a time when Sandra's laugh used to hit me like a tide, inevitable, immersive, disarming in a way that made even the worst days shrink into background noise. That version of her still appeared sometimes, flickering like a dying filament, usually when the cameras were on or we were at a dinner with people who only knew the mask, not the woman. Our life looked perfect from the outside. I handled logistics for her vlogging trips, booked travel, fixed her gear, backed up files when her drives crashed. I gave her the kind of stability most creatives beg for: a clean house, predictable income, total freedom. And for a while, that seemed to be enough. But then came the phrases. Harmless at first, I just need a little more creative headspace. I'm trying to reconnect with who I was before us. At first, I supported it. I encouraged her to take solo trips, thinking it would make her miss home more, thinking absence really did make the heart grow fonder. What it actually did was open a door she didn't want to close. She began closing the office door when she edited videos, claiming she needed the right headspace. Her passwords changed. Nothing aggressive. Just, "Oh, I had to reset them. Babe, it's no big deal." She started using her phone more at night, turning it face down when I walked into the room, like the screen was allergic to daylight or loyalty. Once, I saw her swipe away a notification that looked like a video chat request. She said it was her editor. I didn't ask. I just said, "Okay," and went back to what I was doing, even though my stomach was making knots that had nothing to do with hunger. The real shift came in how she used words. She didn't say "we" as much anymore. It became I and me and my goals. She started talking about how she was finally starting to feel alive again, which is a sentence no man wants to hear after 10 years of sharing bills, beds, and bad Wi-Fi. Her schedule changed too, erratically. Sometimes she'd disappear for 3 days, claiming it was a last-minute content shoot with a brand partner. She never used to go anywhere without planning it on our shared calendar. But now she started to call it controlling when I asked about details. Once, she left town for a wellness retreat, and I found a men's watch in the glove compartment of her car 2 days after she got back. I turned it over in my hand, a scratched Casio with a cracked leather band. She said it belonged to her friend Joanna's boyfriend and that they'd swapped cars during the trip. But I'd met Joanna's boyfriend. He didn't wear watches. He was a trail runner who timed his life by breath, not minutes. Still, I said nothing. I placed the watch back where I found it. Like a good soldier, I filed the data away for later. Her photos started changing too. In the early days, I was behind the camera. Now, her pictures were taken from odd angles, tabletop shots at rooftop cafes, mid-laugh moments captured with the precision of someone who knew her face intimately. Someone else was holding the camera now. I checked her social media one night and realized I couldn't see her stories anymore. Not blocked, but restricted. She'd left just enough visibility to avoid suspicion, but the real footage, the filtered dream she was building, that was hidden from me. I asked her once if something was wrong. She said I was imagining things, that I was acting insecure, and that my questions were limiting her freedom. So I stopped asking. She began talking about energy, chakras, balance. She lit sage in the kitchen and said the space felt heavy. I wanted to tell her that smoke and good intentions couldn't scrub the scent of deception out of the walls, but I didn't. She started sleeping on the edge of the bed, not turned away from me, just distant, like someone waiting for an early flight, ready to leave before dawn without waking anyone. She smiled less, unless there was a lens in the room. Her laugh became sharp, not joyful, like she was performing for an audience that didn't include me. The worst part wasn't the secrecy. It was how polite she became. Detached, careful, robotic. She said, "Thank you," when I brought her tea. "Appreciate it," when I carried her bags in from the car. Like I was the concierge of a hotel she no longer planned to stay in. I once watched her from the kitchen as she FaceTimed someone in the living room. She had headphones in, so I couldn't hear the voice. But I watched her tilt her head, bite her lip, and smile that slow, sweet smile she used to save for me. That was the moment the crack formed. Not a break, not yet, but a hairline fracture across the image I'd been clinging to. The illusion that love alone was enough to keep someone rooted. I stood there in silence, mug in hand, tea going cold, and let the weight of that fracture sink in. It happened on a Wednesday. The kind of day so forgettable that the universe uses it as filler, cloudy, lukewarm, still. Sandra had said she was spending the afternoon filming ambient sequences at the riverside for a new mindfulness video. I didn't question it. I made her a sandwich, packed her camera batteries, and kissed her goodbye with the kind of soft calm that only comes from knowing your enemy has no idea you've stopped trusting them. She left smiling. I waited 10 minutes, stepped into the office, and opened the tracking interface on her gear. A leftover habit from our old shoots. Her DSLR still had the GPS module I'd installed when she lost it in Tulum. It pinged from a suburban neighborhood 10 miles west, nowhere near the river, and stayed there for hours. I sat. I watched. And I waited. That night, she came home glowing. Flushed cheeks, wind-blown hair, smelling faintly of peppermint gum and someone else's cologne. She told me the light had been so magical and that she was thinking of doing a full series on water and silence. I nodded. Asked nothing. Said little. That was the moment I knew I was done asking questions I already had answers to. But what broke me wasn't that lie. It was what I saw 2 nights later. I'd returned early from the storage unit where I kept old equipment. She didn't hear me come in. She was in the living room, on the couch, watching old footage. Not her usual edits. This was different. I watched from the hallway, motionless, as she leaned in close to the screen, biting her thumbnail, her smile small and private. On the TV was a video I didn't film, grainy, handheld, shot from a low angle. Her and Nate. My couch. My house. My whiskey bottle on the table beside them like a goddamn sponsor. She laughed in the video, threw her head back, then looked directly into the camera. "Don't send this to Leon," she said, giggling. "He still thinks I'm in Istanbul." The man behind the camera said something low, too muffled to catch, but it made her laugh harder. She said, "He's so serious, poor guy. I think he actually believes we're forever." Then the screen cut to black. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I watched her rewind and replay that same 10 seconds. Twice. The second time, she turned the volume up, as if to really savor it. My name, coming from her lips with pity. Not love. Not regret. Pity. That was the fracture line. Not the infidelity. Not the lies. It was the knowledge that she had started to see me as a fool, a prop in her story, an old man too slow to notice that the stage was being torn down around him. She thought I was background noise. That she could rewrite the narrative in real time, and I'd still be clapping at the end credits. And still, I said nothing. I turned around, walked back out the door, and got in my truck. Drove 3 miles to an old rest stop I used to stake out for tactical tests. Sat in silence for an hour, just breathing. Not crying. Not shaking. Just breathing. Cold. Controlled. Focused. Because something in me had snapped in a way that couldn't be fixed. You don't glue a broken scope, you replace it. You don't yell at a traitor, you outmaneuver them. That night, when I came back home, she was asleep. I walked past her, the soft sound of her breathing like a stranger's rhythm. I sat down at my desk and opened a folder I hadn't touched in years, old ops. Inside were spreadsheets, legal documents, burner email logins, asset maps, backup IDs. Tools of a younger me, sharper me. A version of Leon who didn't smile much but didn't get blindsided either. I wasn't hurt. Not anymore. I was activated. The kind of still, cold silence that comes after you've accepted the mission. And this time, the mission wasn't survival. It was removal. No confrontation. No grand reveal. Just precision. I closed the folder, powered down the computer, and went to bed beside the woman who thought she had outplayed me. And I smiled, because she had no idea the war had already begun. I became invisible in my own home. Not literally, of course, but the kind of invisible that only comes when the person you once loved has convinced herself you're no longer paying attention. She moved around me like I was a forgotten chair, occupying space but irrelevant to the current aesthetic. And that worked perfectly for me. I began with time. Patterns. She said she had a new brand deal with a meditation company, which meant weekly Zoom calls every Thursday at 3 p.m. I left the house early that day, told her I'd be back late, range testing some new optics with the guys. I parked a mile down the road, cut through the tree line, and approached the house from the rear like I'd done on a dozen recon jobs. She was in the living room, wine glass already out. No laptop, no Zoom call. Just her, a Bluetooth speaker, and a voice message playing, his voice. Nate. Casual, cocky, familiar. I recorded the audio from a distance using a directional mic, then slipped away before she even knew the trees had ears. I started asking simple, innocent questions in the evenings. How was the call? Did the rep say anything about the travel budget? Her answers were neat, confident. She'd rehearsed them. That confirmed one thing, she thought I was still on page 1. That gave me room to turn the page without warning. I activated an old social account I used during my time consulting for a military contractor, blank profile, generic name, no followers. I used it to follow the social media accounts of a woman named Dana, Sandra's best friend. Dana liked to tag everyone and everything, and she had no idea her stories were a trail of breadcrumbs. In one photo, posted from Lisbon, she tagged Sandra's real location, Manitou Springs. I cross-referenced the timestamp with Sandra's calendar entry that read, brand shoot, Portugal teaser. Cute. I kept my tone steady. Neutral. I even offered to help her edit some of the fake Lisbon footage when she got back, just to see if she'd flinch. She didn't. That's when I knew I needed to go deeper. I went to our bank site. I wasn't looking for big purchases. That would be too obvious. I looked for anomalies in routine. Every Thursday for the past 2 months, there had been a $9.87 charge at the same gas station on the west side. A place she'd never mentioned. A place with no logical connection to her brand, her friends, or her family. I drove there one morning and sat in the parking lot. Watched. Waited. At 3:14 p.m., a black SUV pulled in. It wasn't Sandra, but I recognized the passenger. Nate. He hopped out, walked inside, came out 5 minutes later with a coffee and a receipt. She wasn't with him. But that gas station, it was a dead drop. A routine meeting point. I was watching Clockwork. I went home and installed a hidden app clone on her phone while she was in the shower, a replica of her email client, but mirrored silently to a backup server I hosted years ago for beta testing encryption software. I didn't check the emails daily. I waited. Let the data build up. I wanted patterns, not fragments. I started to bait her, subtle comments to test her improvisation. We should go to Colorado Springs next weekend, maybe see that jazz bar you like. Her smile froze for just a beat too long. Oh, no. I think I'll be filming that weekend, she said, reaching for her planner like a shield. I watched her hands. Too still. Too careful. I dropped a casual line the next morning about Dana posting funny Lisbon videos, just to see if she knew the net was tightening. She laughed. Too loud. Too quick. She always gets the best footage, she said. Not once did she ask why I'd mentioned it. That's when I knew she wasn't suspicious of me at all. She thought she was untouchable, that I was still lost in the fog of marital inertia, clinging to comfort while she repurposed my life into B-roll for her new one. The next step was isolation. Quiet, invisible removal. I created a new financial account, transferred incremental amounts from our shared account into a secure asset vault, small enough to avoid alerts, large enough to prepare the board. I updated the deed on the house to reflect sole ownership through an old clause from before we were married. She'd never read it. She thought love was enough. She never realized paperwork is sharper than emotion. She kept planning trips. I kept tracking locations. She changed passwords. I already had access to the keystroke logs. She thought I didn't notice when she hit her phone during dinner. I'd already cloned it. And every time she smiled at me with that carefully polite expression, I smiled back. Not because I believed her, but because I knew that belief was the only thing keeping her comfortable. And I wanted her comfortable. Comfortable people don't see the trap until the steal has already closed. It happened at a gallery opening, an absurdly pretentious event Sandra had begged me to attend because her networking circle was co-sponsoring it. Some local artist she barely knew was debuting a series of abstract landscapes, all fog and grief and overpriced ambiguity. I arrived early, unnoticed, blending into the crowd like any other silent partner dragged into aesthetic rituals they didn't understand. I'd already planned every beat of the evening. I'd requested one of the gallery's projectors in advance, told the coordinator I was sponsoring a digital tribute to my partner's travel brand. She smiled, grateful for the free PR. I had 20 minutes of looped, curated images prepared. At first, tasteful shots from Sandra's public videos, something to stroke her ego and drop her guard. She arrived fashionably late, wearing a blood-red dress she once told me made her feel dangerous. I thought, how fitting. She kissed my cheek lightly, the way people kiss someone they owe money to, and immediately drifted toward a group of men in tight suits and looser morals. I waited. Let her drink her wine. Let her speak in airy tones about vision and creative alignment. Then the projector flickered. The gallery lights dimmed slightly, drawing attention to the back wall. The first images were hers, sunsets over Dubrovnik, mountain shots from Colorado, slow-motion laughter under lens flare. People clapped. She turned to me, smiling like a queen. Then the slide changed. A grainy still, her hand on Nate's thigh in the front seat of my truck. Another, her standing in a hotel room mirror, taking a selfie while he kissed her shoulder. Gasps whispered through the crowd. The final slide lingered, her asleep, partially undressed, his silhouette reflected in the window. I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I simply turned to her and said, loud enough for only her to hear, "That's you, right?" Her face collapsed in on itself. She blinked, then turned toward the crowd and laughed. Too loud, too brittle. "That's taken out of context," she said, voice cracking just slightly. "It's not what it looks like." I tilted my head. "It looks like Betrayal in 1080p. She stepped toward me, lowering her voice. "You're blowing this way out of proportion. We were just talking. You're reading into everything." I nodded. The hotel room was part of the conversation? She rolled her eyes. "It was a mistake. Leon. One time. I wasn't thinking straight. You were so distant. You're always in your own world. I raised an eyebrow. So your solution was to crawl into someone else's? Her face hardened. You don't get to act like some saint. You're emotionally unavailable. You live like a ghost. I needed connection, not just roof repair and protein bars. I looked at her, long and silent. Let the words settle. So your answer to emptiness was secrecy? You built a second life on the ruins of the first one and thought I wouldn't see the dust. She crossed her arms, squaring herself. At least Nate sees me. He listens. He makes me feel something. Not like you, cold, calculating, always watching like you're waiting for an excuse to detach. I smiled, slow and steady. And yet I was the one still loyal. Still paying for your flights. Still fixing your camera lenses while you looked through them at someone else. Her mask cracked further. You know what? Maybe I was looking for a way out. Maybe I got tired of being your side project. Your safety plan. Your dependable old man in the shadows while you played soldier with spreadsheets. The room had gone uncomfortably quiet around us. People pretended not to watch, their curiosity leaking from every corner. Her hand shook slightly now, fingers clenching her wine glass like a weapon she didn't have the nerve to use. You think this makes you the hero? She whispered, dragging me out in front of everyone? This is petty. Childish. I stepped closer, my voice like frost. No, this is clarity. You taught me exactly who you are, and I thought the world should see the same slideshow I've been forced to watch in silence. Her face paled. Finally, fear entered the equation. What are you going to do, Leon? She asked, voice tight, trembling now under the scaffolding of broken pride. I leaned in, lips near her ear. Nothing. Yet. I'm just enjoying the view from the high ground. Then I stepped back, hands in my pockets, calm as ever, while she stood there, red dress, glass trembling, breath unsteady. Around her, the gallery lights came back on, soft jazz resumed, and the crowd resumed their conversations, a bit more distant now. Nobody offered her another drink. Nobody looked her in the eye. And I didn't leave. Not yet. I wanted her to feel what it meant to be exposed. To stand at the edge of everything she built, knowing the next move belonged to the man she thought had already lost. She cornered me in the kitchen the next morning like a predator wounded by its own trap, barefoot, hair wild, still wearing the same red dress as if she thought proximity to the past might reverse it. We need to talk, she said, her voice sharp, desperate, trembling with forced composure. I didn't answer. Just sipped my coffee. The silence didn't sit well with her. It never had. You ambushed me, she spat. You humiliated me in front of my colleagues. Do you even understand how that looked? I looked at her, flat and detached. Accurate. Her jaw clenched. You smothered me, Leon. You made me feel like I was dying in here. Everything was about control, routine, rules. God, you schedule coffee like it's a military op. I said nothing, just stared. She started pacing, barefoot steps loud against the tile. You're not even trying to understand. I was lonely. You think just because you pay for things, that means you're present? You think love is a checklist. I stirred my drink. You wanted space. I gave it to you. You used it to disappear. She froze mid-step. That's not fair, she snapped. I was trying to grow. You were holding me back. I tilted my head. Funny. You grew sideways, into someone else's bed. Her eyes flared. You can't reduce 10 years to one mistake. It wasn't one. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. Just facts, the way you'd report a pattern of enemy movement. No judgment, no tone, just coordinates and consequences. She laughed, bitter and loud, like she was auditioning for hysteria. You were boring. Predictable. You never surprised me. You were more interested in your files and gear than in me. I nodded once. And yet you stayed. Used the house. My money. My silence. She slammed her hand on the counter. You think you're better than me? You think you're some noble victim? She stepped closer. You were never a real man, Leon. You were safe. Convenient. A placeholder. I met her eyes and didn't blink. And yet here you are begging a placeholder to look at you. Her breath hitched. She wasn't crying yet, but the pressure was rising behind her eyes like a fault line about to split. You don't even feel anything, do you? She hissed. I cheated. I betrayed you. And you're just sitting there? Drinking coffee like this is some damn courtroom. I finally set the mug down. Because I already buried you. She took a step back. That was the first time she recoiled, not from words, but from the absence of emotion behind them. You're not angry? She asked, voice thinner now, smaller, unfamiliar even to her. I shook my head. Anger implies hope. I'm past that. She tried a new tactic then, softening. Tears she hadn't earned starting to glisten. You were my safe place, Leon. I messed up. I was scared. I didn't think you'd want me anymore. You were right. The silence stretched. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold, suddenly exposed. You're not even the man I remember, she whispered. I leaned forward, voice low and lethal. No, I'm the man who watched the one I remember die in real time. You just didn't see the funeral. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her expression was empty now, anger drained, manipulations failed, the last card played. And I just stood there, unmoved. Because the moment you stop caring, they stop being dangerous. They just become noise. And she knew it. That terrified her more than rage ever could. I began with the accounts, silent financial maneuvers that could pass for regular maintenance if you weren't trained to notice timing. Every transaction was staggered, incremental, legal. I shut down the joint savings first, diverting the balance into a private holding account I'd created years ago for gear testing expenses, quiet, hidden, untraceable, without the right routing knowledge. The credit cards followed, one by one, hers first. I didn't cancel them. I simply downgraded their limits to 0, converted them into monitored authorized user tags, then flagged her spending patterns with my bank's fraud team under a compliance test pretense. I kept the tone polite, professional, boring. No red flags, just gray clouds gathering. The house was next. Years ago, I'd structured our property ownership under a revocable trust, one she'd never read, trusting me to handle the paperwork like always. I moved the house title entirely into a clause that granted me primary rights in cases of moral or financial misconduct, a safeguard she'd once joked about. I filed the amendment in a local satellite office, not the city branch. Less chance of delay, more control. She still thought she had half of everything. What she didn't know was that half of nothing is still nothing. Her digital world was easier. I had months' worth of evidence, emails, messages, time-stamped locations, cloud backups, screen captures, even audio from her Bluetooth speakers synced accidentally with my old mic app. I compiled it all into a single encrypted drive and labeled it with a name only I would recognize, Echo_0. Then I printed a hard copy. Not for legal reasons, just for satisfaction. I created a new email account, blank, cold, sterile, and sent the drive, unlisted, to 3 people. Her brand partner, her video editor, and her project liaison at a wellness startup she'd been getting to work with. No message, no accusations, just links, dates, and data. Let the silence speak. I called her father next. Not to scream, not to tattle. I simply said, I thought you should know where your daughter really spent her Lisbon trip. Then I emailed him the same file I sent the others. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. That night, I changed the locks. She still had her key, but the pins had shifted. When she came home and found herself locked out, she texted me a long string of WTF messages. I replied with one word, secured. I didn't block her. I let her reach out. Let her squirm. Let her realize how deeply I'd been listening while she thought I was asleep. I sold her car the following week. Technically, my name was still on the title, and she hadn't made a payment in over 4 months. The buyer paid in cash. Clean. Final. I transferred the utilities, cut off her phone plan, and reclaimed every piece of gear I'd bought under my name for her content. That included the camera, the lights, the mic, the software license. All returned, logged, secured. Without it, she had no content. Just a ring light, an empty wall, and a voice that suddenly had no echo. I went to her workspace next, the shared studio she used with Dana. I booked it out under my name for a week-long veterans art residency, using one of my consulting aliases. She was furious. I left a note in the reception logbook. Reclamation always starts with space. Finally, I filed the divorce paperwork. No confrontation, no threats. Just a plain, bulletproof motion citing documented infidelity, misappropriation of shared assets, and abandonment of marital duties. I attached screenshots, timestamps, travel logs. I hired a process server she wouldn't recognize, an actor I knew from an old client's gig. He handed her the envelope while she was filming a video on healing your inner truth. Fitting. Every part of this was designed not just to sever, but to dismantle. She thought she had months. She had hours. She thought she had leverage. She had exposure. I didn't yell. I didn't warn. I simply removed every layer of comfort she'd built around her betrayal and left behind the core. A woman who bet everything on my inaction and lost to my silence. The art festival was her stage, an event she'd been hyping for months on every platform she still had access to, a curated scene filled with influencers, brand scouts, and local press hungry for stories about independent creators. She walked in glowing, dressed like a woman who believed the spotlight was still hers, chin high, smile tuned to perfection. But the room had already seen the real footage. I'd made sure of it. 2 nights earlier, I sent the same encrypted file, screenshots, video clips, message logs to the event's organizing committee, her sponsors, even the local creative grant board that had once praised her for her authentic storytelling. No commentary, no threats, just the raw data of her deception, time-stamped and irrefutable. I stood in the back of the venue, watching as she floated from group to group, expecting admiration and receiving only avoidance. Polite nods, tight smiles, quick exits. She noticed it by the 3rd conversation. Something was off. Eyes weren't meeting hers. Conversation stopped when she approached. One of the sponsors she'd flown in from Denver didn't even acknowledge her, choosing instead to greet me by name. I nodded once, calm and silent, and returned to my place against the wall. Her voice rose slightly when she saw me. "Leon," she said, too bright, too eager. "Didn't expect to see you here." I said nothing, just watched. Her smile wavered. She turned back toward a group of creators and said something about awkward timing and relationship turbulence. But they didn't laugh. One of them, Dana, stepped back and folded her arms. "You didn't tell me the videos were real," she said. The room quieted. Sandra blinked. "What are you talking about?" Dana pulled out her phone, screen already cued to a clip of Sandra and Nate in my house. "This. You said it was photoshopped." Sandra reached for the phone. Dana pulled it back. "You lied to everyone. You weaponized our sympathy." A murmur rolled through the crowd. One of the younger creators, a woman Sandra had mentored, stepped away without a word. Sandra laughed, shaky, forced. "Come on, guys. This is ridiculous. Leon is just bitter. He's trying to destroy me because he couldn't handle." "We saw the dates," Dana said coldly. "You were sleeping with him during your pitch meeting with my investor." Another silence. Deeper now. A kind of collective recoil. Sandra turned, searching for support, but found none. Even Nate wasn't there. He'd gone silent days ago, his phone disconnected, his social pages wiped. I made sure he knew exactly what she'd told people about him, how she'd laughed behind his back, called him her exit practice. Her last message to him, buried in a thread she never deleted, read, "Don't fall in love. He's still useful." That message now lived in his inbox, forwarded from an anonymous account. She was alone, and she knew it. "You all think this makes him a hero," she snapped, pointing at me like a defendant in a trial already lost. "You think standing there and saying nothing makes him right? He's a manipulative, passive-aggressive, emotionally unavailable coward." I didn't move, didn't blink, just let her spiral. She turned toward me, desperate now. "Say something. Come on, Leon. Tell them how perfect you were. Tell them how easy it was living with a machine. With someone who'd rather run code than hold his wife." Her voice cracked on that last word, wife, as if she suddenly realized it no longer applied. I watched her chest rise and fall, frantic and uneven. The dress she wore now clung wrong, like it was rejecting the weight of her shame. She took one final step toward me. "Do you feel good?" she whispered. "Watching me fall?" I tilted my head. "No," I said, my voice calm even. "I feel finished." Her face broke, like glass under pressure, eyes wide, lips trembling, the edges of her mascara starting to smear from tears she hadn't granted herself permission to shed until now. Around her, no one moved to comfort her. No one reached out. Her kingdom of curated moments and strategic charm collapsed in real time, and she stood at the center of it, the architect of her own ruin. And I stayed. I didn't walk away. I didn't gloat. I simply stood, calm, composed, and unbothered, so she could see exactly who still had everything intact. She looked at me, truly looked, and in that moment understood something far worse than hatred. I no longer cared who she was. I had erased her from my future with the same precision she once used to erase me from her plans. And that, more than exposure, more than shame, was what finally broke her. It happened at her sister's engagement dinner, an event I almost declined, but then realized would be the perfect crucible for what needed to happen. Everyone was there. Her parents, stone-faced since the fallout. My brother and his wife, seated across the table with tight, unreadable expressions. Her co-workers from the gallery, a few mutual friends who still hadn't chosen sides but were leaning. Sandra walked in late, like she was entering a film set, dressed in something meant to say confidence but screaming desperation. Her smile cracked the moment she saw me sitting at the head of the table, next to her father. The tension could have cut stone. I stood when she approached, polite, neutral. She opened with a breathy, "We need to talk," and I answered loud enough for the table to hear, finally ready to explain the lies or just reheating the same script. She flinched, but then her tone turned sharp. "Why are you even here? This isn't about you. This is family." Her mother shifted in her chair. "It was family," I said, "until you decided to turn marriage into a content campaign." She snapped. "You made our life miserable. You isolated me." I leaned in. "No. I gave you freedom, and you weaponized it. You didn't want a husband. You wanted a sponsor." A gasp from her friend Dana. Someone muttered, "Wow." Sandra's face went red, but she didn't back down. "You were never there. You just hovered, watching, judging, never saying what you felt." I shot back, "And you ran to the first man who gave you compliments in exchange for access. Don't pretend this was emotional starvation. You were feeding off two tables." She tried again, louder, shriller. "At least he made me feel seen, unlike you, hiding in your tech cave, running your routines like a damn robot." My brother stood halfway from his seat, but I raised a hand. "You want to talk about robots?" I said, stepping toward her. "You looked me in the eye, week after week, kissed me goodnight, knowing exactly where you'd been hours before. That's not robotic. That's sociopathic." Her father closed his eyes, shaking his head. Her sister whispered something to her fiancé. A phone came out. Someone was recording. Sandra saw it and barked, "Don't you dare film this." Dana crossed her arms. "Why not? You were fine broadcasting your healing journey when it was fake." Sandra turned on her. "You're supposed to be my friend." Dana didn't blink. "I was." Then I saw the footage. Sandra rounded on me again, losing grip. "You think this makes you strong? You think standing there, embarrassing me, makes you right?" I didn't raise my voice. "I'm not here to prove anything. I'm here because every person at this table deserves to know the real version of the woman they've been defending." "Leon, stop," she hissed. "You're humiliating yourself." "No," I said calmly. "I'm showing everyone what happens when truth walks into the room and the lies can't find a chair." She lunged forward, finger in my face. "You're cold. Emotionally dead." No wonder I looked elsewhere. Her father stood, voice low but firm. "Enough." But I wasn't done. "Tell them about the hotel in Springs. Tell them about the messages you sent him while you were lying next to me. Tell your mom what he still thinks I'm in Lisbon myth." Her voice cracked. "You read my private messages?" I nodded, and watched you walk over me with the kind of smug confidence only a person who thinks she'll never be caught can muster. "And I let you, because I wanted to see how far you'd go before the mask slipped." She was crying now, smudged makeup and wild eyes. "You're a monster," she choked. "You're not a man. You're a machine with a grudge." I looked at her, then turned slowly to the room. And yet somehow, the machine is the only one here who stayed loyal. Silence. Thick. Real. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing now, hands shaking. No one moved to comfort her. Not her sister. Not her friends. Not even her mother. I stood tall, adjusted my cuff, and turned toward the door. "I'll let you all finish dinner," I said. "I've already eaten the truth." Then I walked out calm, clean, and untouchable, leaving her in the ruins of her own performance. It didn't take long for her world to collapse, not because I pushed, but because it was already rotting from the inside. The brand deals dried up within a week. No one wants to be associated with a woman exposed for exploiting loyalty while preaching authenticity. Her sponsors pulled out quietly, through lawyers and PR teams, all citing reputational conflict. Her job at the gallery didn't survive the second wave of screenshots. Turns out, one of her donors was on the board, and he didn't like being lied to. Dana blocked her. So did most of her social circle. Her followers dropped by the thousands, not because I told them to, but because people can smell decay. The Instagram story slowed, then stopped. Her TikToks went dark. She tried relaunching under a new handle, but even the algorithm refused to forgive her. Her parents stopped calling, too ashamed to explain her to their friends. Her mother sent me a thank you card. Her father sent back the wedding photo I'd framed for them, glass shattered but image intact. She moved to a smaller city 3 hours south, working front desk at a wellness spa with a different name and adult look in her eyes. Her voice changed quieter now, stripped of performance. Nate was gone before the dust even settled. Deleted his accounts. Left town. The same man she sacrificed everything for didn't even leave a forwarding address. I heard from a friend of a friend he's couch surfing in New Mexico, telling people he's taking time to reflect. She sent me one message, a long, meandering email filled with tear-stained metaphors about pain, healing, and how love sometimes gets lost in the noise. She ended it with, "I still love you." I replied with one line, "Strange. I don't even remember your name anymore." 2 weeks later, she showed up at my house. Hair pulled back. No makeup. Eyes bloodshot. She didn't knock. She just stood there on the porch like a forgotten package. I opened the door. She whispered, "Please, can I come in?" I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, I didn't feel anything. No rage. No sorrow. No satisfaction. Just the distant echo of a man who once loved someone who never existed. I said, "There's nothing left in here for you," and closed the door without another word. I watched through the side window as she stood there for a minute, breathing like someone who had been underwater too long and just realized the surface was still miles away. Then she turned, walked to her car, and drove off, her taillights fading into a road she'd paved with every lie she thought I wouldn't notice. And now, I sleep like a man who survived a fire, scarred, but free. To those of you who made it through this story, thanks for walking with me. Tell me where you're listening from. Did you enjoy the ride? Or did it hit a little closer to home than you expected?